Hey guys, in this video I'm very glad to share with you how to integrate Google reCAPTCHA version 3 reCAPTCHA v3 in a web application based on Java Spring Framework using Spring Boot technology. First, let's understand some key points about Google reCAPTCHA v3. reCAPTCHA v3 verifies requests with a score based on users' interaction. So it will give you the ability to take action in the context of the site. And with reCAPTCHA v3, there's no widget, no interruption on the user's experience. And upon verification, Google reCAPTCHA API will return a score based on the user interaction. The score is ranging from 0.0 to 1.0, in which 0.0 indicating the request is very likely a bot, and 1.0 indicating the request is very likely a human. Proves that it's a good interaction. And the Google reCAPTCHA documentation recommends developers to use a threshold of 0.5. Let's take an example, a scenario in which we can apply Google reCAPTCHA v3. Say a customer needs to log in. He must enter email and password and click the login button. And this customer login form is protected using Google reCAPTCHA v3. If the application on the server side detects that the reCAPTCHA score is under the threshold of 0.5, it will redirect the customer to the OTP login screen. OTP means one-time password. The OTP password is sent to the customer's email address, and the customer needs to check their email to type the one-time password to log in. And through this video, I will guide you how to integrate Google reCAPTCHA v3 into a Spring Boot application that contains the customer login form like this. And through this video, I'm going to guide you how to integrate Google reCAPTCHA v3 into a Java web application based on the following technologies: a Spring Boot web application with Thymeleaf as template engine, RestTemplate for calling Google reCAPTCHA, RESTful APIs, Spring Security for authentication, Google reCAPTCHA v3 JavaScript library to protect the login form. And I'm using the following software programs: Java Development Kit JDK, Spring Tools with IDE SDS. To help you understand the workflow of Google reCAPTCHA v3 integration, I draw this diagram. First, when the login form gets displayed in the browser, it will send a request to the Google reCAPTCHA server with the site key, and Google reCAPTCHA server will return the API.js, which is a reCAPTCHA JavaScript library to protect the login form. And when the user clicks the login button in the login form, value with the parameter g captcha response will be included to the request. The g captcha response value is calculated by Google reCAPTCHA JavaScript library based on the user's interaction. And we need to create a custom login filter here before the Spring security filter to intercept the request to apply Google reCAPTCHA v3. And in the login filter, we call the Google reCAPTCHA API with two parameters: G captcha response and secret key. And Google reCAPTCHA API server will return a JSON response including the score. And in our application, based on the score returned from the Google reCAPTCHA server, if the score is under the threshold 0.5, we redirect the user to the login OTP form. Else, if the score is greater than 0.5, we continue the Spring security filter chain to process the authentication as normal. So this is a workflow of Google reCAPTCHA v3 integration in a Java web application based on Spring Boot. So here are the steps which we need to follow through this video. Rest a new site for Google reCAPTCHA v3 and use the Google reCAPTCHA v3 JavaScript library to protect the login form. And in the server side, we need to create a custom login filter to intercept the request before the Spring security filter. And we use Spring RestTemplate to call Google reCAPTCHA API to verify the reCAPTCHA response. And the application we make a decision based on the return score from Google reCAPTCHA API. Suppose that we have an existing Spring Boot project. Here I have the project Submit frontend in Spring Tools IDE. Let me start this Spring Boot application and show you the customer login form. And as you can see in the application properties file, this application is configured to be running with embedded Tomcat server listening on port 80, and the context path is /submit. Okay, the application is up and running. Now let me use Chrome browser to access its homepage. Localhost /submit here, and you can see the user interface of the application appears, and the user can click the login link in the top menu here to log in to the application. And this is a customer login form. And through this video, I will show you how to integrate Google reCAPTCHA v3 to protect the customer login form. Now let's rest the new site for Google reCAPTCHA v3. Make sure that you have logged in to the Google account and head to the reCAPTCHA homepage at google.com/reCAPTCHA and click the admin console here. And rest the new site label is, for example, localhost v3 reCAPTCHA v3, and choose the reCAPTCHA type is reCAPTCHA v3 here. Domain is localhost because we are going to test on localhost. Later you can update the domain name. Click accept the reCAPTCHA terms of service and click submit. And we have a Google reCAPTCHA site created, and later we will use the site key and secret key in our application. Next, let's write code to update the login form to protect it with Google reCAPTCHA v3. So I have the HTML document for the login form, customer login here. And we include a script to refer to Google reCAPTCHA API src equal to https google.com/reCAPTCHA/api.js. That's it, to refer to Google reCAPTCHA JavaScript API. And in this login form, we have the submit button here. And to protect this login form using Google reCAPTCHA v3, we need to update this button. We need to use button tag in HTML5 instead of input type equal button. And make sure that we specify the CSS class is G dash reCAPTCHA dash just G reCAPTCHA, and bootstrap class btn and btn dash primary for the button. And we also need to specify the data side key, which is a side key of the reCAPTCHA site. We have raster here, so copy side key here, paste here, data side key, and data dash callback. Specify a callback function on submit, and data dash action is submit, and the caption of the button is login. So to protect the login form, we need to update the button with this attributes class g-reCAPTCHA data side key, pointing to the side key of the reCAPTCHA we have created here. Callback on submit and data action submit, and we need to write a JavaScript function here. Script, and we write the function on submit, which will be invoked by Google reCAPTCHA API when the user clicks the login button on submit. Parameter is token, and just submit the form. We give the form an ID here, ID equal login form, document get element by ID login form, and call submit method to submit the form. Okay, that's it. And let's refresh the login form. And you can see nothing appears in the login form except that we have a small logo at the top, at the bottom of the page here. You can see protected by reCAPTCHA here. You see, that means we have successfully implemented the code to protect the login form, and the reCAPTCHA logo appears in the bottom right corner here. And next, we need to create a custom login filter to intercept the request before the Spring Security filter. So in the project, we create a new Java class under this package, new class name is custom login filter, and its superclass is username and password authentication filter here. Finish. It's better to stop the application because we are going to write a lot of code. Create a constructor for this class custom login filter with two parameters, login URL and HTTP method. And then we call a super method set requires authentication request matcher to indicate that this filter will intercept only the request that matches this login URL and HTTP method, and path request matcher here, login URL and HTTP method. So this filter we intercept only the request with the given login and HTTP method. And because in the login form we use the We use email for username field here, email. So we need to set the username parameter to email here, and we need to override one method from the superclass. Here is a method attempt authentication. This method will be invoked before Spring we process the authentication. So we write implement the logic to verify the reCAPTCHA response here. For now, we just print something here for testing purpose before processing authentication. And to apply this custom login filter to this Spring Boot application, we need to modify the Spring security config here. This is a configuration of HTTP security, and here I write a new method here, private custom login filter. Get custom login filter. Create a new object, custom login filter. Filter equal new custom login filter. For the login URL is /login, and HTTP method is post, and then return the filter. And we need to configure this filter a little bit. Filter dot set authentication manager is a default authentication manager provided by Spring Security. That throws declaration. And we need to also add set the authentication failure handler. Authentication failure handler here. New authentication failure handler. An anonymous class. So we redirect the user to the login error page when authentication fails. Respond. Send redirect to login question mark error, which is a default URL. Spring Security we redirect the user to this URL when login fails. And here before the login form we need to add filter before here, and the filter class is custom login filter, and class type is custom login filter dot class. Okay, that's it for creating a custom login filter to intercept the request before the Spring Security filter processes the authentication. Now let's start this application to make sure that this filter is working. Start, and we expect that it will print before processing authentication when we try to log in. Okay, let's refresh the login form and enter the email Ravi Kumar here. Ravi Kumar, click login. You see, I have successfully logged into the application as a customer Ravi Kumar here. Let's see what printed in the console view. You see, in the console view, it prints before processing authentication here. That means the filter was successfully invoked. To be sure, we need to run the application in debug mode. So we set a property debug equals true here, and then restart the application in debug mode. Okay, now let's try to log in. Log in here, Ravi Kumar. Successful. And now let's inspect the console, and you can see the statement before processing authentication is printed here, and after that the SQL statement select customer. This is the SQL statement used to authenticate the customer here. As you can see, the last here where customer email equal to the parameter here, and then it redirects the user to the home page here. So that means that our custom login filter was actually invoked before authentication processed by Spring Security. And now let's try to log out and try to log in. Invalid login. Type any password. And you can see it redirects to the login error page here. Login question mark error here. Okay, so we have successfully created a custom login filter to intercept the request before the Spring Security filter. We process the authentication. Next, we need to create a new Java class that is responsible to verify reCAPTCHA response. So create a new Java class here. reCAPTCHA v3 handler. And in this class, we declare an instant variable to hold the secret key. reCAPTCHA secret key, which is a secret key here. When we register the new site for Google reCAPTCHA v3 here, copy secret key and paste here. And we also need to have the URL to the Google reCAPTCHA API. reCAPTCHA server URL equal to this URL https://reCAPTCHA/API/site verify here. And we have the method verify here with that text parameter string reCAPTCHA from response. The reCAPTCHA from response is the value of this parameter which is sent from the form here, the reCAPTCHA response. And we just print something for testing purpose. reCAPTCHA v3 handler code, and we print the reCAPTCHA from response here. G reCAPTCHA last response here. And in the custom login filter, we create a new instance of the reCAPTCHA v3 handler class here. reCAPTCHA handler equal new, and we call the method handler verify. We read the value of the post parameter reCAPTCHA response from the request here. String equal request get parameter g dash reCAPTCHA dash response, which is sent from the login form here. The value will be automatically generated by Google reCAPTCHA API JavaScript library. Okay, let's save the changes and test. We need to run our Spring Boot application in debug mode to see more information, more useful information. Okay, we can close this window. Refresh the login page. Login. Try to log in successfully. Ravi Kumar. Successful. And let's see what printed in the console view here. Before the Spring Security authentication. Here you see, before processing authentication, reCAPTCHA v3 handler code, and this is the value of the reCAPTCHA response parameter sent from the client here. And in the next few minutes, we will call the Google reCAPTCHA API server, including this post parameter here. And next, we are going to write code to call Google reCAPTCHA API using Spring RestTemplate, and we will make a request including two parameters, reCAPTCHA response and secret key will be sent to Google reCAPTCHA server, and Google reCAPTCHA server will return a JSON response with including the score, and then we read the score. So let's update the code in the verify method here. We create a new HTTP headers object, headers equal new HTTP headers, and we set the content type for the header is content type here, media type, application form URL encoded here, and we create a multi-value map here. Key type is string, value type is string, map equal new link multi-value map to contain the parameters, the reCAPTCHA response and secret key. Map add key is secret. You can refer to the documentation of Google reCAPTCHA here, documentation v3, and you can see it requires the let me see. It requires the request containing secret, which is a secret key of reCAPTCHA, and response is a value of the parameter G. reCAPTCHA response remote IP is optional, so we don't specify. And you can see this is the URL of the API request method post here. Okay, secret is a value of reCAPTCHA secret here, and the second parameter is response. Response is a value of reCAPTCHA from response parameter here, and we create a new HTTP entity multi-value map string as a request object. New HTTP entity passing the map and headers here. Okay, and to use Spring REST template, we need to create a new REST template object, REST template builder. Sorry, just REST template equal new REST template. Use the default settings of Spring REST template. Then we call the method REST template. Post for entity here with 3 parameters: URL, request, and response class. URL is reCAPTCHA server URL here. Request is a request object here, and response type is string dot class because we want to read the JSON response as string, and we assign the return value to a response entity string response. That's it. And now for testing purpose, we just print the content of the response from the reCAPTCHA API. System out print line response. reCAPTCHA response. Okay, that's it, and now we can test. Login again. Test login successfully with the email Ravi Kumar here. Successful. And now let's see what printed in the console view here before the Spring security processing. And you can see reCAPTCHA response here. You can see HTTP status code 200, and in this JSON object, it contains these fields: success, true, challenge, timestamp, hostname, localhost, and the score. You can see the score number is 0.9 here, indicating that it is very good interaction and it's safe to process the login. Action is submit here. Now let's compare with the response in the documentation here. reCAPTCHA v3. And you can see site verify response here: success, score, action, challenge, timestamp, hostname. Error code is optional in case there's error. Error code field will be added to the JSON response. And you can see as per the documentation, if success is true or false here, whether this request was valid reCAPTCHA token for the site. That means we have successfully connected to the Google reCAPTCHA API to verify the response and we can see the content of the response here. And it's better to encapsulate the response JSON string here into a Java object, so we can use the values of the fields easily. So create a new Java class here, name it as reCAPTCHA response, and we define the fields corresponding to the fields as per the documentation here. First is boolean success, and then the string is host name, and action, and score is the float number score, and challenge timestamp in string, challenge timestamp here. And for the error codes, because it includes the dash character here, so we need to use the special annotation JSON property to map the Java field with the real property name in JSON data error dash codes, and the Java field name is because the error code is an array of string, so we need to declare an array of string error codes here. That's it for the fields in the reCAPTCHA response class, and generate the getters and setters quickly here. Select all, generate. That's it. And in the handler class here, we use another method, post for object, to return a custom response class instead of string. reCAPTCHA response here, and the class type is here. That's it. And now we print all the values of the response object here. Sorry. System not out of green line. Response is success. Action. You get action here, and host name. Get host name here. Host name, and the most important field is a score. Get score. And then the arrays of error codes here. Challenge timestamp. Challenge timestamp. Get challenge timestamp. And for the error code array, we need to check if a response get error code is not null. Then we iterate through each error code. For each error code in the array of error code, get error codes here, and we print out the error code. System out here, error codes. Plus error code here. That's it. Okay, let's test again. So you see, it's better to encapsulate the JSON respond into a Java object. So then we can use the getter methods easily to check the value. Okay, now log in again. Now we come here. Successful. And let's see in the console view here it prints here. You see reCAPTCHA response, success to action submit, host name, localhost, and the score number. The most important field in the JSON response here, score number 0.9, indicating that the request was a very good interaction, very likely a human challenge timestamp. And because we don't have any error, so the content of the error codes array was not printed. Now let's try to make an error here. For example, try to add something to the secret key here. Okay. And wait for the application to restart, and we test again. Okay. Login. Sorry, close this window. And you can see login successfully. But here, Google reCAPTCHA server returns the JSON response with error code is invalid input secret here. And you can see action is no, hostname is no, score 0.0, success false because the site secret is invalid. So that's how to use error codes in the JSON response from Google reCAPTCHA server. Okay, now let's update the code to verify method here to return the score value here. So change the return type of this method to float, and we return the response get score here. And then in the reCAPTCHA handler class, in the custom login filter here, save the change login filter here. We get the score float score equal handler verify here, and then we decide which action needs to be taken depending on the score. If, for example, we use recommended threshold 0.5, if score is under than 0.5, then we redirect the user to the OTP login form. Else, we return attempt authentication method here, meaning that we allow the Spring security filter to process the authentication normally. Here, for example, we request dispatcher. We forward the request to the OTP login screen. Forward the user OTP login here. One-time password login. Forward request and response. Surround with try catch here because we override this method that has a signature throws only authentication exception, so we can't declare to throw to change the method signature. So we need to catch here. Okay, now let's create this login OTP login page here. It's similar to the customer login form, so we can copy the login here, copy and and paste here. OTP dash underscore login, and we change the user interface to OTP login. We delete this ID. Delete this for demo purpose. Just to show the OTP login form. Input type equal submit. Value is login. We don't need script here. Usually there's only one field. Here you see. With OTP login screen, the application sends one-time password to the user's email, and the user must enter the one-time password. So in the login form OTP, we have only one field, one-time password here. So delete all this. Input type equal text name OTP, and placeholder is one-time password OTP. And we need to create another controller, Spring controller. Here, class OTP controller post mapping slash OTP underscore login that matches to the URL we specify here in the custom login filter here. OTP underscore login here. This will be handled by this controller here. Public string view OTP login form, and return the view name is OTP underscore login, which will be resolved to the view name OTP login here. That's it. Okay. And for testing purpose, because I can't produce the case that the score number less than 0.5, so for testing purpose here we return 0.4 here in the verify method here. You see the verify method here we return 0.4 for testing. The OTP login screen will be displayed. Here you see if the score is less than 0.5, then we redirect the user to the login OTP login screen. Okay, save all the changes, and we are ready to test the OTP login screen. Now let's refresh here. Login. And you can see the OTP login screen appears here. One-time password here, and the user must enter one-time password to login. For testing purpose, I just show the OTP login screen like this. And I also recommend you to write some additional code to handle the case that the um, success value of the success field is false here. For example, if success is false, response as success is success here, then we throw an exception new. For example, invalid reCAPTCHA token exception. Invalid reCAPTCHA token. Please check side key. Because as per the documentation of reCAPTCHA v3 here, the value of the success field in the JSON response here indicating that whether this request was a valid reCAPTCHA token. And create a new site, a new exception here, new exception class here, and we need to override is super constructor from super class that takes a string error message here. Okay. And in the login, throw new invalid, add throws here. And in the custom login filter, we need to handle this exception here. Zero which I catch here. If we move the score checking code here into the child block here, float, that's it. And you also catch the exception of this statement where request dispatcher forward in the same child catch block. Yeah. And in case of error, we send error to the response like this. Response send error with HTTP status code is internal server error here, and with the error message here. And for this statement, we need to check as well. And we're logging the exception here. Okay, that's it for the code that verifies the Google reCAPTCHA v3 response like this, you see. And now let's test the case that the exception, invalid reCAPTCHA token exception is thrown. So in the handler method, we try to modify the reCAPTCHA secret here to cause this invalid reCAPTCHA token exception thrown. And note that in the Spring security config here, before send redirect here, we need to check if the response is not committed. Response is not committed, then we send redirect. That's it. Save all the changes, and we are ready to test. The exception will be thrown. Login. You see, we got the error. Sorry, there's one error occur on the server. And in the console view, you can see the content of the reCAPTCHA response here. Success, false here. Very good, right? So that's to handle the case an exception is thrown. And finally, you need to uncomment this and return the actual value of the score of the reCAPTCHA response here. Okay, so let's do the final test. And test login successfully without any problem because I'm actually a human. Log into the website. You see, we got error here. Let's see. Sorry, we need to change back the secret here to the correct value. Log in again. Successfully. You see, I have logged in successfully as the customer Ravi Kumar here. Let's try to log out. Log out success. And let's test login fail. Login fail. And you can see the Google reCAPTCHA v3 and doesn't interrupt the user experience. And it's up to our application to decide the action if the score is under the threshold value, as you can see here. Here, this is a decision making based on the score value returned from the Google reCAPTCHA server. If it is less than the threshold of 0.5, we redirect the user to the OTP login screen. Else, we continue the normal authentication processing of Spring Security. Awesome, right? So that you have learned how to integrate the Google reCAPTCHA v3 into a Java web application based on Spring Boot. The important point with reCAPTCHA v3 is to get the score value returned by the Google reCAPTCHA API and decide the action. It's up to our application to decide the action based on the returned score value here. I hope you will find this video helpful. Please help me to grow this channel by clicking the subscribe button and then like, comment and share this video. Thank you.